If your team keeps ignoring your SOPs, then there's a good chance that your document makes sense to you, but not to the person doing it. A business owner will say, we already have SOPs. And then when you open the SOPs, it is outdated, it's missing steps, it's too vague, or written in a way that only makes sense to the person who created it. So yes, technically there is SOP, but can someone actually follow without asking 5 more questions? And that's the real test. So whenever I create an SOP or whenever I look at my client's SOP, I always ask and I always tell them that when building SOPs, if a 5th grader looked at your SOP, they should be able to understand the next steps. Because SOPs are built for continuity. They are built so that the business does not stop just because someone is sick or the person doing the task is on leave, replaced, promoted, or no longer available. So yes, in a way, your SOPs should be built for dummies. It should be simple, it should be clear, it should be step by step and no assumptions. Because what is obvious to you may not be obvious to the person who has to do the work. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the step-by-step process I use to create an SOP teams can actually follow. Hi, I'm Ana Rica Aboro, the founder of TAP OBM and TAP Virtual Solutions. At TAP OBM, we lead operations for growing online businesses that have clients, team members, and moving parts, but still feels like too much of the business depends on the person leading it, or too much depends on the founder or the CEO. We clean up the back end, we build system that actually gets used, we create cleaner and clearer team accountability, and make the day-to-day operation easier to run without everything coming back to the business owner. And one of the first places I check when the team keeps asking the same questions is the company's SOP, because most of the time the process was never built clearly enough. So let's go through the process step by step. So step 1, pick one process only. Do not start by trying to document the entire business. And because this is where people get very overwhelmed. Like they open a spreadsheet and list everything like client onboarding, content creation, lead follow-up, weekly reporting, invoicing, team meetings, launch tasks. Like they just lay it all out in a single go. And what happens is that, and then the list gets too big that nothing can actually get done. So my advice, step 1 is definitely just start with one process. Like pick the process that is already creating a problem. So in order for you to do that, you should ask yourself, what does my team keep asking me about? And what keeps getting delayed? What keeps coming back with mistakes? What task only I seem to know how to do properly? So for this video, let's use one example all throughout, a weekly client report. Maybe every Friday, your team is supposed to prepare and send a report to the client. But somehow every week, someone still asks where the template is or what numbers to include, who should review it, and where to save the final document. That is the process we are going to build an SOP for. So that's going to be the entire example that we're going to use in this video. Because now the SOP has a real purpose, right? You're not just documenting just to feel organized. You are fixing a bottleneck, right? So step 2, define the outcome first. So before you write the steps or before you write the entire procedure on how to do that process, you must define the outcome first. People usually start with a task. One of the major problems that people do, they start with okay, this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But the better way of doing it is after choosing what process to document, you should define what your outcome is. Right? So you should answer this question. What should be true when this process is done? So going back to our example, the weekly client report, the outcome is not just send the report because that's going to be too vague. The better outcome would be the client receives an accurate weekly report every Friday by 3 p.m. with updated numbers, progress notes, blockers, next steps, and the file saved in the correct client folder. That is much clearer because now the person doing the actual work knows what they're aiming for. So before you write the SOP, answer these questions. What is the final output? Who receives it? When should it be completed? Where should it be saved? And the most important question is, what should done look like? Steps matter, but the outcome matters first. Step 3, list the tools, the links, and the access needed. So step 1 is to define what process you want to document. Step 2, define the outcome. And after the outcome, list everything that person needs before they begin. So this is where you remove unnecessary questions. Now, again, going back to the weekly client report SOP, the person may need, number 1, like access to the Google Drive, the weekly report template, the project tracker, the client notes, like Slack approval thread, the ClickUp task, the link to the ClickUp task, or if you're using other project management software, like the link to that specific task, right? And you have to put those directly inside the SOPs before you even run down or before you even list down all the steps. And what you should avoid is saying like vague sentences like go to the client folder, because the question there, okay, like which folder, like where's the exact link, right? What is the name of the file? And if there are 3 similar files, which one should I use? Make it painfully clear, because this section should answer the question, what do I need before I start? Because if the person has to message you just to find the template or just to find the link, then the SOP is already failing. Step number 4, write the steps like the person knows nothing, okay? Now, this is the actual process, right? This is where you need to slow down. And the reason why I'm saying that you have to slow down is because business owners skip steps all the time because they know the business too well. So there's a tendency that they forget that not everyone has the exact same context. So instead of writing, prepare the report and send it to the client, you have to break it down. Like example, open the weekly report template, make a copy of it, rename the file using the correct file format or naming format, pull the numbers from the project tracker, update the progress section, add any blockers if there are any, and add the next step for the upcoming week. So these are like, these are the really, you have to be very granular in documenting all the final or all the steps needed for this process. And that's how clear it needs to be, because you're not writing this because your team cannot think. I just want to make that clear. You are writing it so that the process does not depend on guessing. When the SOP has missing steps, what the tendency is, the team fills in the blanks. And when people fill in the blanks, the outcome becomes inconsistent. One person does it one way and then the other person does it another way. And then at the end of the day, you get frustrated because the work does not look the same. And because the standard was never clear in the first place, right? So you have to be really granular and you have to be very anal in terms of listing down all the steps needed in order to complete that process. Okay, so step number 5, add screenshots, arrows, boxes, and a Loom video or a recording on how to do the task. And let me explain this. If the step is visual, please do not explain it with 5 long paragraphs. Just add a screenshot and then add an arrow, add a box around the button they need to click, like circle the exact part of the screen they need to look at. Make it obvious so that the person knows exactly what to look for inside the platform or inside that tool, right? Now, let's go back to our example, the weekly client report SOPs. Don't just write, open the weekly report template. You have to show the folder, put the box around the correct template, add an arrow pointing to the file, and then write one short instruction under it. You say, open this template and make a copy. That is enough. You don't need long paragraphs, right? And if preparing the weekly client report involves a lot of clicking, copying, formatting, or moving between notes, record a short video version too. And because some people learn better visually, so a good SOP can have both. A written version for a quick reference and a video version for visual learners. But please note, I'm not campaigning for you to do just a video SOP. Nobody wants to rewatch a 20-minute video just to remember one step. The best setup is actually both. A short written SOPs with screenshots, boxes, arrows, and links, and a Loom video or a video walkthrough for the parts that are easier to show than to explain, right? Step 6, add the final quality checklist. So every SOP should have a final checklist before the task is marked complete. This is where you define what acceptable looks like or what done looks like, right? Because someone can finish the task and do it poorly. Again, going back to our example, the weekly client report, the checklist might say, did I use the correct template? Yes or no? Did I update the date? Yes or no? Did I check the numbers? Yes or no? Is the client name correct? Yes or no? So ask those. You need to have a checklist of questions so that the person doing it can actually ask himself or herself at the end of the task, okay, did I do this? Did I do that? Did I yes or no? Before they mark it as for approval or before they even mark it as complete, right? This final checklist prevents so many small mistakes. It catches issues before the work gets passed on or before you even review the tasks. This is also where you reduce the amount of reviewing you personally have to do because the team starts checking their own work before it even reaches you. That's smart. Okay, step number 7, assign the owner. Every SOP needs an owner. And I do not mean the person who wrote the document. I mean the person responsible for keeping the process working. Again, going back to our example, the weekly client report SOP, who owns that process? Who updates the SOP when report format changes? Who checks if the numbers are correct? Who notices when the process is no longer working, right? Because if nobody owns it, nobody maintains it. And if nobody maintains it, the SOP becomes outdated. And once it becomes outdated, the team stops using it. The team stops trusting it. So inside the SOP, you have to add the process owner, the backup owner in case the process owner is not available, last updated, and then the next review date. And of course, that next review date, you have to put it in your calendar or to the owner's calendar. So it's as simple as that, but it's very important because now the SOP is not just floating around the business. Someone actually owns it. Step number 8 is to add a quarterly review date. Your SOP cannot be one-time document. Never. Right? Because business changes and tools change, client preference change, and team roles change. The way you do the work changes. So every SOP needs a quarterly review. Again, going back to our example, the weekly client report SOP, someone should check every quarter. Again, the questions to be asked should be, is the report template still updated? Are the screenshots still accurate? Are the links still working, right? Is the owner still correct? Maybe like that person is no longer with the company, so it has to be updated. So these are the things that you have to ask during that quarterly review. Now, a quarterly review keeps the SOP alive. It keeps the process updated, and it makes sure that the document still matches how the work is actually being done. Step number 9, test the SOP before you call it done. Please do not call an SOP finished just because you wrote it. This is where most the business owners fail, because once they are done documenting the step-by-step process, they just mark it as complete. You will not know if it works until someone uses it. For the weekly client report SOP, give it to someone who does not know the process well. It would be best if you give it to someone new in your team who has never done that actual process. And then ask them to follow it. Then pay attention. Where do they pause? What questions do they ask? What file can they not find? To me, like personally, what I would do is to ask them to record themselves while doing it. We have Zoom recordings. They can just like start a meeting, record themselves while doing the exact same process. And then you have to identify what's missing. When do they pause? What step is confusing? What did they assume incorrectly? Like things like that. Because that feedback is data. It shows you what is missing. If they ask where the report template is, add that link. If they don't know what the final report should look like, you should add an example. If they complete the report but the quality is off, you have to tighten the checklist. And if they pause at step 3, then of course you need to rewrite step 3. So this is how you build SOPs that actually work. You build it, someone tests it, you fix it, you assign ownership, you review it. That is the rhythm. And the quick SOP template, if you're creating an SOP today, here is the simple structure I would use. Number 1, SOP title. What is this process called? Number 2, the purpose, right? Why does this process matter? Number 3, outcome. What should be true when this is done? Number 4, owner. Who owns the process? Number 5, tools and links. What does the person need before starting? Number 6, step-by-step instructions. What exactly needs to happen in order? Number 7, screenshots, arrows, boxes, examples, or even video. What should they look at or watch so they can follow the process without guessing? Number 8, final quality checklist. What should be checked before marking it as complete? Number 9, handoff. Who needs to be notified? Where should the file go? And what happens next? And number 10 is a quarterly review date. When should this SOP be checked again? That is the structure. 10 steps. It does not need to be fancy. It just needs to be clear enough that someone can follow it without needing you every 5 minutes. So if you want to build SOPs your team will actually use, do not start with a massive operations manual. Start with one process that keeps creating questions. Define the outcome. List the tools and links. Write the steps like the person knows nothing. Add screenshots, arrows, boxes, examples, and a video. And add the final quality checklist. Of course, you have to assign an owner, add a quarterly review date, and test it with a real person. That is how you build an SOP for continuity, not just for documentation. Because the goal is not to have a folder full of SOPs. The goal is to build a business where the work can continue even when one person is not available. The goal is to stop explaining the same thing over and over again. The goal is to stop having every small question come back to you. And if your SOPs are still sitting in a folder right now and nobody is using it, then you should open it now. Just one SOP. Read it like a new person and ask yourself honestly, can someone follow this without needing me? If the answer is no, then that is where you need to start. If your business has SOPs, but your team still keeps asking the same question, your back end probably needs more than a document. It needs ownership, standards, and a process that matches how the work actually gets done. If you want someone to look at your back end and help you find where the gaps are, you can book a discovery call with me through the link below. And comment below, what is one SOP in your business that your team still does not really use? I look forward to seeing that answer, and I hope to see you on the next video.